I should have known something was wrong the moment the hostess looked at me like she already knew I had been abandoned. Valentino's was the kind of Manhattan restaurant where the candles were real, the wine glasses were thinner than secrets, and every woman in the room seemed to belong to a world I had only ever passed from the sidewalk. I arrived at 8:17 p.m. in a black dress I had worn to 3 interviews and 1 funeral, with my hair pinned up by a drugstore clip and my last good pair of heels biting into the backs of my ankles. The reservation was under my father's name. Carter. Party of 2. The hostess smiled too carefully when she said it, and I followed her through a room full of low laughter, silverware tapping porcelain, and men in watches that could have paid my rent for a year. My date was not there. Of course he was not there. The man my father had insisted I meet, the man who was supposed to help us fix everything, had left me sitting alone beneath a gold chandelier with a folded napkin in my lap and humiliation crawling up my throat. I checked my phone every 30 seconds until the screen went black. Dead battery. Perfect. I ordered water because it was free, then pretended to study the menu as if I could afford anything printed on it. $42 for chicken. $68 for steak. I almost laughed. Instead, I swallowed hard and kept my face calm, because girls like me learn early that panic makes rich people uncomfortable. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Couples leaned closer across their tables. A woman in pearls glanced at my empty chair, then at me, then away. I felt myself shrinking under the soft amber light. I told myself to stand up, walk out, and never answer my father's calls again. But when the check came for the water and the bread I had not asked for, my card declined. The waiter's expression changed so quickly it hurt. Not rude. Worse. Sorry. I reached for my purse with shaking fingers, searching for cash I knew was not there, when the room seemed to quiet by half a breath. Not all at once. Just enough for me to notice. The waiter straightened. The hostess stopped moving near the front. Somewhere behind me, a chair slid back against marble with a sound that cut clean through the restaurant. Then the waiter leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. Miss Carter, Mr. Blackwell would like to pay for your dinner. My hand froze inside my purse. I looked up at him, certain I had misheard. Who? But the waiter's eyes had already shifted past me, toward the far end of the dining room. I turned slowly. At table 12, 4 men sat beneath a pool of golden light, all in dark suits, all watching without looking like they were watching. And at the head of the table was a man who did not need to raise his voice to own the room. He was tall, even-seated, broad-shouldered, white, with black hair brushed back from a face too calm to be kind. His white shirt cuffs were rolled just enough to show the edge of a black tattoo climbing from his left wrist under the fabric, and when he lifted his glass, every man at his table waited until he put it down. His eyes met mine. Gray. Steady. Unforgiving. I should have looked away. I should have left my pride on the table with the unpaid check and walked straight into the cold. But something in his stare held me there, pinned between fear and curiosity. He did not smile. He only gave the smallest nod, as if he had been expecting me long before I walked in. The waiter placed a fresh napkin beside me with hands that were suddenly too careful. Mr. Blackwell also said you should not leave yet. My pulse climbed into my ears. Outside the tall windows, rain began to streak down the glass, turning the city lights into trembling gold. I looked back at the empty chair across from me, at the dead phone beside my plate, at the bill I could not pay, and finally at the stranger in the dark suit who somehow knew my name. That was the first time I saw Nathan Blackwell. Not as a man. Not as a monster. But as the door my life was about to be dragged through. The walk from table 12 to my little table by the window could not have taken more than 10 seconds, but I felt every one of them like a separate heartbeat. Nathan Blackwell did not hurry. He moved through Valentino's as if the restaurant had been built around his silence, as if the marble floors, the candlelight, the waiters in white jackets, and the soft jazz near the bar all understood that he was not a guest there. He was gravity. Conversations thinned as he passed. Eyes dropped. Men who looked important a moment ago suddenly looked very interested in their wine. I sat frozen with my purse open on my lap, one hand still gripping the declined card like it was evidence of a crime. When he reached my table, He did not ask permission to sit. He simply pulled out the chair across from me, lowered himself into it, and placed 2 fingers on the folded bill beside my plate. The waiter appeared instantly. Nathan did not look at him. "Put it on my account, Daniel." The waiter nodded once. "Of course, Mr. Blackwell." Then he vanished. I stared at the man across from me, trying to decide which part of him frightened me most. The calm gray eyes. The sharp line of his jaw. The tattoo slipping from beneath his left cuff like black ink trying to escape his suit. Or the way he knew the waiter's name without needing to read a tag. "I did not ask you to pay for me," I said, though my voice came out softer than I wanted. His gaze moved over my face with a kind of quiet precision that made me sit straighter. Not like he was admiring me. Like he was reading damage. "No," he said. "You were too proud for that." My cheeks burned. "You do not know anything about me." "Emily Carter," he said, and my blood went cold. 26. Event assistant for Marlowe and Finch. Part-time receptionist at a dental office on West 34th. You live in Queens with a view of the elevated train and a front door lock that should have been replaced 2 years ago. My fingers tightened around my purse strap until the fake leather creaked. "Who are you?" "Someone who pays attention." That is not an answer. It is the safest one I can give you in public. Outside, rain ran harder down the windows, silver lines cutting through the reflected glow of the chandeliers. I glanced toward the entrance, calculating the distance. 30 feet, maybe 35. Too far in heels that already hurt. Nathan noticed the glance. Of course he did. "Running would draw attention," he said. "I am not running." "You are thinking about it." Because a stranger just recited my address over dinner. For the first time, something almost like amusement touched his mouth, but it disappeared before it became a smile. Fair. That single word unsettled me more than if he had argued. He leaned back, and his cuff shifted, revealing more of the tattoo curling over his wrist, black lines wrapped around pale skin like smoke. "You came here expecting Warren Hale." The name hit me hard enough to steal my breath. Warren. That was the man my father had begged me to meet. A business associate, he had said. A man who could help us. A man who only wanted to talk. "Where is he?" I asked. Nathan's eyes did not move from mine. "The man who stood you up tonight was never coming." The room seemed to tilt. I heard a fork touch a plate somewhere nearby. A woman laughed too loudly at the bar. My dead phone sat beside my glass, useless and black. Then why was I told to come? My voice barely held together. Nathan reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and placed a cream-colored envelope on the table between us. My name was written across the front in clean black ink. Emily Carter. Not typed. Handwritten. Careful. Intimate. Wrong. I did not touch it. "Open it," he said. "No, Emily." My name in his voice sounded less like a request and more like a door closing behind me. "Open the envelope." I hated that my hand obeyed before my pride could stop it. Inside were photographs, copies of signatures, bank statements, and one page with my father's name at the bottom. My throat tightened so quickly I could hardly breathe. Nathan watched me read the first line. Then the second. Then the sentence that made the restaurant disappear around me. My name was there. Not as a daughter. Not as family. As collateral. I looked up at him, and whatever he saw in my face made his expression turn colder, quieter. "Your father," Nathan said softly, "made promises with things he did not own." I pushed the papers back like they had burned me. "This is not real." "It is." "He would not do that." Nathan's silence was the cruelest answer in the world. Then he looked past my shoulder, toward the front entrance, and every trace of almost kindness left his face. "Unfortunately," he said, lowering his voice, "I was not the only man who came here for you tonight." I turned before I could stop myself. 3 men had entered Valentino's without checking in at the hostess stand. They wore expensive coats still dotted with rain, their hair damp, their faces blank in a way that felt practiced. Not angry. Not rushed. That was what scared me. They looked around the restaurant as if they were searching for a misplaced reservation, but every nerve in my body knew they were searching for me. Nathan did not move. He only lowered one hand to the table, palm flat beside the envelope, and the men at table 12 changed with him. No one stood. No one spoke. But their shoulders shifted. Their eyes lifted. The air tightened until even the candle between us seemed to burn smaller. "Do not stare," Nathan said quietly. I snapped my eyes back to him. "Who are they?" "Collectors." My stomach dropped. "For my father?" "Not anymore." I looked at the papers scattered between us, the signatures, the numbers, the copies of messages I had never seen. The largest number sat halfway down the first page, cruel in black ink. $280,000. I read it twice because my mind refused to accept it the first time. My father had told me we were behind on the mortgage. He had told me he needed help with a business loan. He had told me dinner with Warren Hale would be uncomfortable but harmless. Harmless. That word suddenly felt obscene. "This is impossible," I whispered. "My father sells insurance. He does not know people like this. Your father knows exactly enough to get himself destroyed, and not nearly enough to survive the aftermath." My throat burned. "Stop talking about him like that." Nathan's gray eyes held mine, steady and merciless. "I am talking about him more gently than he deserves." The words landed hard, but I had no defense against the page in front of me. There was my father's signature. His looped R. His uneven C. The same signature from my birthday cards, from school permission slips, from the check he wrote me when I graduated community college and cried because it was only $50, but it was all he had. My hand trembled as I picked up the last sheet. It was not a contract. It was a note. Short. Cold. "Emily can persuade compliance if needed." I stopped breathing. Not because the sentence was long. Because it was not. Because my entire life had been reduced to 5 words by the man who used to check under my bed for monsters. Nathan watched me read it, and for the first time, I saw something in him that was not control. It was anger held behind glass. "He did not mean it," I said, but even I did not believe my voice. "People usually mean what they sign when they are desperate." "Then why are you showing me this?" "Because I need you to understand the table you are sitting at." I pushed back from him, but the chair legs only scraped a few inches before his voice stopped me. Not loud. Never loud. "Emily." My name sounded different now. Less like information. More like warning. "Those men at the entrance were sent by Warren Hale. Warren was supposed to meet you, smile at you, make you feel safe, and walk you outside before dessert." My skin went cold beneath my dress. "You said he was never coming." "He was never coming himself." The room blurred at the edges. I looked toward the hostess stand again. The 3 men had separated. One near the bar. One near the coat room. One pretending to study the wine wall, his gaze sliding over me like a hand I wanted to wipe off my skin. "Why would they want me?" I asked. Nathan leaned closer, just enough for the candlelight to catch the hard line of his face and the black tattoo at his wrist. "Because your father owes money to men who think fear is currency. And you." My voice shook, but I forced the words out. "What do you think I am?" His eyes lowered briefly to the papers, then returned to mine. "Someone who should never have been placed on a ledger." That should have comforted me. It did not. Nothing about Nathan Blackwell felt safe. Not his calm. Not his suit. Not the way the entire restaurant bent around his presence. But when the man near the bar took one slow step in our direction, Nathan's expression changed into something so cold that my breath caught. He reached across the table and slid the envelope back into his jacket as if ending a meeting. "Your father sold your name," he said softly. I bought it back. I did not understand him at first. Bought it back sounded like a receipt, like my name had been folded, priced, and passed across some invisible counter while I was answering office phones and reheating leftover soup in my apartment. I wanted to stand. I wanted to slap the papers from his hand. I wanted to call my father and make him tell me this was all a mistake, that he had been scared, that he had not really signed away the only daughter he had left. But the man near the bar moved again, and every thought inside me went quiet. Nathan noticed before I did. His eyes never left mine, yet somehow he knew exactly where that man was standing, exactly how close he had come, exactly how many steps separated him from our table. That kind of awareness should not have been possible. It belonged to wolves and storms and men who had learned long ago that comfort was just another word for being careless. "Listen to me very carefully," he said. His voice was low enough that no one beyond the candle could hear. In 30 seconds, they are going to approach this table. My fingers curled against the linen. Then call the police. Something in his face closed. The police cannot fix what your father opened tonight. Then what can? I hated how small I sounded. I hated that I was asking him. Nathan reached into his jacket again, slowly, deliberately, and withdrew a small black velvet box. My stomach tightened before he even opened it. Inside was a ring. Not delicate. Not sweet. A diamond set in white gold, cold and bright beneath the restaurant lights, the kind of ring that did not ask for attention because it already owned it. I stared at it, then at him. No, he did not flinch. Emily. No, my voice broke, but I kept it firm. Whatever this is, whatever game you are playing, I am not part of it. You already are. Because you decided that? Because your father did. The truth hit harder because he did not say it cruelly. He said it like a fact. Like weather. Like gravity. The man from the bar was 10 feet away now. The one near the coat room had turned, blocking the path to the front door. The third stood by the wine wall with his phone in his hand, not looking at the screen. Nathan looked down at the ring, then back at me. There are only two versions of you they understand. Unprotected or claimed. My chest tightened. I am not property. No, he said, and for the first time, his voice sharpened. You are not. The words surprised me. The anger behind them surprised me more. He leaned closer, close enough that I could see the faint shadow of ink rising near the open collar of his shirt, a dark tattoo disappearing beneath white fabric. Close enough that his voice became a whisper meant only for me. But they believe you are. So for tonight, we let them believe you belong to the one man in this room they will not challenge. I could hear my own breathing. Fast. Uneven. The restaurant blurred around the edges, gold lights, rain-streaked windows, white plates, strangers pretending not to watch. And tomorrow? I asked. Nathan's eyes held mine. Tomorrow, you can hate me in safety. The man from the bar stopped beside our table. Miss Carter, he said, smiling like we were old friends. My blood turned cold. Nathan stood before I could answer. The entire room seemed to feel it. His men at table 12 rose with him, silent and controlled, not threatening, just present. Nathan took my left hand gently, giving me 1 second to pull away. I did not. Not because I trusted him. Because I understood the way the stranger's smile tightened when Nathan touched my hand. The ring slid onto my finger, cold as rain. Perfect fit. That scared me more than anything. Nathan turned slightly, placing himself between me and the man beside our table. Then he bent close to my ear, his breath warm against the panic climbing my neck, and whispered, "Tonight, you are my wife." For one impossible second, I forgot how to move. The ring sat on my finger like a dare, bright and heavy, catching every candle in Valentino's until it seemed the whole room was staring at my hand. Nathan did not squeeze my fingers. He did not pull me closer. He simply stood beside me with the calm of a man who had just changed the weather, while the stranger at our table measured the new world Nathan had created. "Mr. Blackwell," the man said, his smile thinning. "I did not realize Miss Carter was with you." Nathan's thumb rested lightly against the back of my hand. Not a grip, not a warning, just enough pressure to remind me that breathing was still required. "Now you do." The stranger glanced at me, and I felt the question in his eyes. Was I going to deny it? Was I going to tremble? Was I going to make one wrong move and turn myself back into a girl alone at a table with a dead phone and no protection? My heart slammed so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Nathan looked down at me. Not commanding. Not pleading. Waiting. That almost broke me. Because the monsters my father had invited into my life expected fear. Nathan expected a choice. I lifted my chin. My mouth felt dry as paper. "I am sorry," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "My husband and I were just leaving." The word husband tasted strange. Too intimate for a stranger. Too dangerous for a lie. But it worked. I saw it land. The man's eyes flicked to the ring, then to Nathan, then to the 4 men from table 12 who had positioned themselves without making a scene. No one touched anyone. No one raised a voice. Still, The message was clear enough to empty the air from my lungs. The stranger stepped back with the smallest nod. "Enjoy your evening, Mrs. Blackwell." Mrs. Blackwell. The name moved through me like cold water. Nathan's expression did not change, but the muscle near his jaw tightened once. He placed my coat over my shoulders himself, careful not to brush my skin more than necessary, and guided me away from the table with one hand hovering near my back. Not pushing. Steering. The restaurant pretended not to watch us cross the marble floor. Forks resumed their gentle tapping. Glasses lifted. A woman laughed too brightly near the bar. The whole room was desperate to return to normal, but I had already learned something terrible about normal. It was only a performance wealthy people, protected with good lighting and expensive wine. At the front, the hostess opened the door before Nathan reached it. Rain rushed in, cold and sharp, carrying the smell of wet pavement and exhaust from the street. A black SUV waited at the curb, engine running, windows tinted so dark they reflected the restaurant lights like mirrors. Nathan paused beneath the awning and looked at me. "Keep walking until you are inside the car." My fingers curled around the ring. "Are they following us?" "Yes." He said it so calmly that my knees almost weakened. I looked over my shoulder, but he shifted slightly, blocking my view with his body. "Do not give them your fear." "Easy for you to say." "No," he said, opening the rear door. "It never is." Something in his voice made me look at him again. For the first time that night, Nathan Blackwell did not look untouchable. He looked like a man who knew exactly how fear felt and had decided long ago never to let it speak first. I slid into the back seat. The leather was warm, the air smelling faintly of cedar, rain, and his cologne. Nathan entered beside me, and the door closed with a soft, final sound that cut us off from the restaurant, the strangers, and the girl I had been before dinner. The SUV pulled away from the curb. Only then did I tear the ring from my finger and drop it into his lap. "I played your wife to survive," I said, my voice shaking with anger I needed more than tears. "Do not confuse that with trust." Nathan looked down at the ring, then out at the rain-blurred city sliding past the window. "I would never insult you by expecting trust that I have not earned." I hated that answer. I hated it because it was not cruel enough to keep hating him cleanly. Outside, Manhattan dissolved into gold and black. Inside, the silence sat between us like another passenger. Then Nathan spoke without looking at me. "Now I am going to tell you why Warren Hale wanted you tonight." The city moved past the windows in broken streaks of yellow and red, traffic lights melting into the rain until Manhattan looked like it was drowning in gold. I sat as far from Nathan as the back seat allowed, my hands folded so tightly in my lap that my knuckles ached. The ring lay between us on the black leather, bright and silent, as if it had more right to be there than I did. Nathan did not pick it up. He did not look offended. That almost made me angrier. I wanted him to be arrogant. I wanted him to give me a clean reason to hate him. Instead, he sat with one arm resting near the door, his tattooed wrist exposed beneath his cuff, staring out at the wet streets like the answer was written somewhere between the passing headlights. "Warren Hale is not a businessman," he said at last. "Not the kind your father believed he was." I let out a small, bitter laugh. My father believed whatever made the next problem disappear. Nathan's eyes shifted to me. "That is how men like Hale survive. They offer desperate people a door, then charge them for walking through it." My throat tightened. I hated how true that sounded. "So, what does he want with me?" "Leverage." The word was soft. The meaning was not. "Against my father?" "Against me." I stared at him. "I do not even know you." "No," Nathan said. "But someone wanted me to believe you mattered before I had time to ask why." The SUV turned onto FDR Drive, tires whispering over wet pavement. Outside, the East River was black and restless, dotted with lights from boats and bridges. Inside, the warm air felt too close. "That makes no sense." "It makes perfect sense if Hale knew I was already watching your father." My pulse stumbled. "You were watching him?" "For 6 weeks." "Why?" Nathan finally turned fully toward me. In the low light, his gray eyes looked almost silver. "Because your father walked into one of my private clubs with a man who had no business being there. He lost money he did not have, signed papers he did not understand, then tried to fix the damage by borrowing from worse people. I pressed my lips together so hard they hurt. You make him sound pathetic. I am making him sound alive. There is a difference. I looked away first. Rain tapped against the roof in a steady, nervous rhythm. My father had always been weak in quiet ways. Missed payments. Broken promises. Stories that changed by morning. But I had built excuses around him because loving him was easier than admitting he had stopped protecting me years ago. Nathan reached into the side compartment and removed another folder, thinner than the first. He placed it beside the ring. Medical invoices for Margaret Carter. Your mother. My breath caught. My mother is dead. Yes. His voice gentled by half a shade. But someone has been paying off old hospital debt in her name for 9 years. My hands went cold. That was my father. Nathan held my gaze. No, Emily. It was not. The words opened something under my ribs. I picked up the folder even though I did not want to. There were payment records, dates, account numbers, a name I did not recognize, and at the bottom of every page, a black mark shaped like a small raven. I had seen it before. Not on paper. On a silver keychain my mother kept in a kitchen drawer, the one she used to touch when she thought nobody was watching. Why do you have this? I whispered. Nathan looked out the window again, but this time his calm had edges. Because your mother saved my life once. The SUV felt suddenly too small for my breathing. What? 10 years ago. Before I became what people call me now. Before the suits and the drivers and the men who lower their voices when I enter a room. I was 24, reckless, bleeding money, trust, and loyalty. Your mother found me outside a clinic in Brooklyn during a storm. He stopped, jaw tightening, as if every word had been locked away for years and hated being released. She did not ask who I was. She did not ask what I had done. She gave me shelter, called a doctor she trusted, and told me that powerful men were usually just frightened boys who learned the wrong language. My eyes burned. That sounded like her. It sounded so much like her that for 1 second, the rain outside became her voice humming in the kitchen. Why did she never tell me? Nathan looked at me then. Because she made me promise never to come near you unless danger came first. I looked down at the ring, at the folder, at my own trembling hands. So tonight was not about my father. Your father opened the door, Nathan said quietly. Warren Hale walked through it. And you. My voice was barely there. Nathan picked up the ring at last, holding it between 2 fingers as if it weighed more than diamonds and gold ever should. I was the lock your mother hoped you would never need. By the time the SUV left the city, my anger had gone quiet, which somehow made it heavier. Manhattan disappeared behind sheets of rain and glass towers, replaced by dark roads, gated driveways, and houses set so far back from the street they looked less like homes and more like decisions made by people who never asked permission. Nathan sat beside me without speaking, the ring still in his hand, the folder closed on the seat between us. I kept staring at that small black raven printed at the bottom of the payment records, trying to connect it to my mother's hands, my mother's voice, my mother's old keychain hidden in the kitchen drawer. She had been dead for 9 years, and still the world was finding new ways to tell me I had never known the whole story. When the SUV slowed before a set of iron gates, I leaned toward the window despite myself. A camera turned above the stone pillar. The gates opened without anyone touching them. Beyond them, a long driveway curved through wet trees toward a mansion made of pale stone and black windows. It was beautiful in the way winter was beautiful. Clean. Still. Unforgiving. Is this where you keep all the women you rescue against their will? I asked. Nathan's mouth did not move, but his eyes shifted to mine. No, that is all you are going to say? I have never rescued anyone against their will before. You put a ring on my finger in a restaurant. You took it off in the car. The answer should have irritated me. It did. But it also reminded me that he had not forced it back onto my hand. The SUV stopped beneath a covered entrance. A man in a dark coat opened my door with a polite nod, like I was a guest arriving for a charity dinner instead of a woman whose life had been rearranged between the appetizer and the rain. Nathan stepped out first, then waited. Not reaching for me. Just waiting. I hated that every choice he gave me felt like a test I had not studied for. Inside, the house smelled faintly of cedar, lemon polish, and old money. Marble floors reflected soft wall lights. Somewhere deeper in the mansion, a clock ticked with slow, expensive patience. A woman in her 50s appeared at the foot of the staircase, silver hair pulled into a bun, face calm but kind. "Mr. Blackwell," she said. "The West Room is ready." Then her eyes moved to me. Not curious. Not judging. "Miss Carter, I am Nora. There is tea upstairs if you want it, and a charger for your phone." The mention of my phone made my chest tighten. "I need to call my father." Nathan looked at Nora. She stepped away quietly. Then he turned back to me. "You can call him in the morning." "No," my voice echoed too loudly in the foyer. "You do not get to decide that. Tonight, Warren Hale will be listening for every call connected to your father. If you speak to him now, you may tell Hale exactly where you are without meaning to." I wanted to argue. I wanted to say he was lying. But every word he had said since Valentino's had been terrible and then true. Nathan walked to a small table near the stairs and placed a set of keys on it. "Your room is not locked. The front door is not locked from the inside. If you want to leave at sunrise, I will have a driver take you anywhere in the country you choose." I stared at him. "And if I leave now? You will not make it 5 miles before someone follows you." The calmness in his voice made the fear worse, not better. He looked toward the staircase. "One night, Emily. Survive one night. Hate me tomorrow in daylight." I followed Nora upstairs because my legs were tired of pretending courage was the same thing as strength. The West Room was larger than my entire apartment, with cream walls, tall windows, and rain tapping gently against the glass. On the bed sat folded clothes in my size. On the desk, my phone charger. Beside it, a new envelope with my name. I opened it after Nora left. Inside were copies of paid bills, a security report for my apartment, a notice that my father had been moved to a safe address, and one photograph. My mother stood outside a small Brooklyn clinic, younger than I remembered, smiling tiredly beneath an umbrella. Beside her stood Nathan Blackwell at 24, pale, soaked from rain, with no suit, no empire, no cold gray armor. Just a haunted young man looking at my mother like she had given him back the world. I found Nathan in the library just after midnight, standing beside a wall of books he probably never had time to read, his jacket gone, his sleeves rolled to his forearms, the black tattoo on his left arm fully visible now. It was not random ink. It was a raven with its wings folded around a broken key. The same raven from the payment records. The same shape my mother had carried on that old keychain for years. He turned when I entered, and for once, he looked almost startled. Not because I had found him. Because I was holding the photograph. Rain pressed softly against the tall windows behind him, turning the glass into dark mirrors. "Tell me everything," I said. My voice did not shake. That frightened me more than if it had. Nathan looked at the photograph, then at me. "You should rest. Do not protect me from the truth and call it kindness." His jaw tightened. The room was warm, but his silence made it feel cold. I walked closer and placed the photograph on the desk between us. My mother smiled up from the glossy paper, frozen in a life I had never been old enough to question. "She knew you." Nathan lowered his eyes. "Yes." "She helped you." "Yes." "And you have been paying her debts since she died." His hand rested on the edge of the desk, the tattoo shifting over pale skin as his fingers curled once. It was the only way I could repay someone who refused money while she was alive. My throat burned. That sounds like my mother. Something changed in his face then. The armor did not vanish, but it cracked enough for me to see the man beneath it. She found me outside a clinic in Brooklyn during the worst night of my life. I had no one I trusted. No safe place to go. She opened the back door and told me that if I brought trouble into her clinic, I had better leave it outside with the rain. A laugh almost escaped me, but it broke before it became sound. She would say that. She was fearless in the quietest way I had ever seen. His voice lowered. She cleaned me up, called an old doctor, gave me coffee that tasted terrible, and spoke to me like I was still human. I had forgotten what that felt like. I looked away because the tears came too fast. I remembered her hands. Warm. Steady. Always smelling faintly of soap and peppermint lotion. Why did she make you promise to stay away from me? Nathan moved around the desk slowly, stopping several feet from me, careful with the space between us. Because she knew my world. Not all of it, but enough. She told me power was a fire. Useful from far away. Deadly in the wrong room. She said you were the only beautiful thing she had ever made, and if I had any honor left, I would never let my fire touch you. My chest tightened until breathing hurt. Then why did you? He looked at the ring sitting on the desk beside the photograph. I had carried it from the bedroom without realizing it. Because Hale found the old payment trail. He learned your mother mattered to me. Then he learned you existed. By the time I understood his plan, your father had already signed the papers and sent you to Valentino's. So you made me your wife in front of strangers. I gave them the only title my world respects. His eyes lifted to mine. I did not do it because I wanted to own you. I did it because girlfriend, guest, witness, and innocent woman would not have protected you for 5 minutes. Wife did. The words settled between us, no longer a threat, not quite a promise. I wanted to hate him for the choice he had made. A part of me still did. But another part of me saw the young man in the photograph, soaked by rain, saved by my mother, carrying a debt that had grown into devotion. You should have told me before you put that ring on my hand. Yes, he said. No excuse. No defense. Just the truth. I chose control because it is the language I know best. Your mother would have been ashamed of that. The honesty hurt more than arrogance would have. I picked up the ring, feeling its weight against my palm. And what happens now? Before he could answer, the lights flickered once. Then again. Somewhere outside, beyond the rain and the iron gates, a security alarm began to pulse through the house, low and steady, like a second heartbeat. Nathan's face went still. The softness disappeared, replaced by the man the whole city feared. But when he reached for me, he stopped himself before touching my arm. Emily, he said quietly, go with Nora. I looked at the ring in my hand, then at the door, then back at him. For the first time all night, I understood the difference between being claimed and being protected. One cages you. The other stands between you and the storm. Nora appeared in the doorway before I could answer, her silver hair slightly loosened, her calm face carrying the first crack of fear I had seen in that house. Miss Carter, she said, holding out her hand. This way, please. The alarm kept pulsing through the walls, low and steady, not loud enough to panic anyone, just loud enough to remind every breath that something outside wanted in. Nathan looked at me once, and in that single glance I saw the command he did not speak. Go. Live. Hate me later. I should have followed Nora. I should have run down whatever hallway led to safety, locked myself behind whatever door rich men built for emergencies, and waited for daylight to tell me who had survived the storm. But my feet stayed rooted to the library floor. The ring rested in my palm, cold and bright, and my mother's photograph lay on the desk beside it. She had once opened a door for a frightened young man in the rain. She had seen something human in him before the world taught him to hide it. Maybe that was why I could not move. Nathan turned toward the door, his face carved back into control. Nora, take her now. No, I said. Both of them froze. My voice was quiet, but it was mine. For the first time that night, not borrowed from fear, not shaped by his protection, not squeezed out of me by another man's choices. Mine. Nathan looked back slowly. Emily. Do not say my name like it is an order. Something passed through his eyes. Pain, maybe. Respect, maybe. I stepped closer and held up the ring. You said I could leave at sunrise. Yes. You said tomorrow I could hate you in safety. Yes. Then stop deciding what courage is supposed to look like for me. The alarm shifted, a sharper tone now, and somewhere beyond the library windows, headlights swept across the rain-soaked lawn. Nathan's men moved through the hallway with quiet urgency. No shouting. No chaos. Just doors opening, voices low, shoes striking marble in controlled rhythm. The whole mansion seemed to become a machine around us. Nathan lowered his voice. This is not your fight. I looked at my mother in the photograph. Then at the tattoo on his arm, the raven wrapped around the broken key. It became my fight when my father signed my name. It became my fight when Warren Hale used my mother's kindness as a map to me. And it became my choice when you finally gave me the truth. His jaw tightened, but he did not argue. That was how I knew he heard me. I slid the ring onto my finger myself. No audience. No lie. No candlelit restaurant full of strangers. Just rain on glass, an alarm in the walls, and a man who looked more afraid of my choice than of anything waiting outside. I am not doing this because I belong to you, I said. I am doing this because I refuse to be a debt, a warning, or a weakness. Nathan's breath changed. Barely. But I caught it. Then what are you? He asked. I walked to his side, not behind him, and looked toward the dark windows where the storm painted the world in silver lines. A witness, I said. A daughter. A woman who gets to decide what her name means. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then Nathan Blackwell, the man who made rooms go silent, bowed his head to me like I had just taught him a language he had never been allowed to learn. Then stand beside me, he said. Not behind me. By morning, Warren Hale's men were gone, turned away by power they had mistaken for ownership and by a truth they had not expected. I was not alone anymore because someone had claimed me. I was not alone because I had chosen myself in a room where every man thought choice belonged to him. At sunrise, Nathan placed car keys, cash, and a new phone on the library desk. Anywhere you want, he said. The mansion was quiet now, washed clean by rain and pale light. I looked at the keys, then at him, then at my mother's photograph. First, I said, taking the keys, we are going to find my father. Nathan almost smiled. Almost. And after that? I touched the ring once, not as a chain, not as a promise, but as a reminder of the night I stopped being collateral. After that, Mr. Blackwell, you are going to learn the difference between protecting a woman and trusting her. He opened the door for me without a word. And this time, when I walked through it, no one dragged me into a new life. I chose it.